I thought I'd ruined everything that night, my career, my reputation, my ability to provide for my daughter. One careless text sent to the wrong person. But sometimes our biggest mistakes lead to our greatest blessings. If you want to know how I went from nearly losing my job to finding a family I never knew I needed, stick around. And if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe, it helps more than you know. The buzzing of my phone jolted me awake. 3:17 a.m. 3 text notifications from Vanessa Montgomery, my boss. We need to talk. I'm coming over. Now. My stomach dropped as I recalled what I'd sent her just hours before. A text meant for Sarah, the woman I'd been chatting with on a dating app for weeks. In my exhaustion after putting Emma to bed and finishing a report for work, I'd selected the wrong contact. By the time I realized my mistake, it was too late. Can't stop thinking about that smile. Dinner Friday? Promise I won't talk about spreadsheets this time. Though I wouldn't mind spreading. I hadn't even finished the awful joke. Just hit send without checking. To my boss. The CEO of Montgomery Publishing, who'd taken a chance hiring me 6 months ago despite my spotty resume and the gaps from when Lisa died and I became Emma's only parent. I scrambled out of bed, heart pounding, and peeked in on my sleeping 6-year-old daughter. Her nightlight cast stars across the ceiling of our modest apartment. Whatever happened next, I couldn't lose this job. Not with Emma's school tuition due and medical bills still piling up from Lisa's final months. The quiet knock at the door came just as I'd splashed water on my face and pulled on a sweatshirt over my pajama pants. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Vanessa Montgomery stood in my doorway in jeans and a Northwestern University sweatshirt, a stark contrast to her usual tailored suits. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she carried a laptop bag and a grocery bag. "Daniel," she said, her voice surprisingly soft. "May I come in?" I'd been working at Montgomery Publishing for exactly 6 months and 4 days. 6 months of barely keeping my head above water, juggling single parenthood and a demanding job in acquisitions. 6 months of dropping Emma at school at the crack of dawn and picking her up from after-school care just before they closed. 6 months of microwave dinners and bedtime stories read through exhausted eyes. Vanessa walked into my apartment, taking in the scattered toys, the dishes in the sink, the makeshift office I'd set up in the corner of the living room. "I'm so sorry about the text," I blurted out. It was completely unprofessional, Anne. "Is that why you think I'm here?" Vanessa set her bags down on the kitchen counter. "Because of some misdirected flirty text?" I blinked, confused. "Isn't it?" She pulled her laptop from her bag. "No, Daniel. I'm here because you submitted this at 11:48 p.m. She turned the screen toward me, showing the acquisition proposal I'd finished before my texting disaster. "This is brilliant work. The kind of insight that could transform our entire business model." Thank you. But it's also the work of someone who's drowning." She pulled out a container of coffee from the grocery bag. "May I make some? I have a feeling we both need it." As the coffee brewed, Vanessa explained. She'd been watching me for months, my early arrivals, late departures, the dark circles under my eyes growing deeper each week. The occasional calls I took in the stairwell, my voice tight with worry as I spoke to Emma's school or doctor. "The text just confirmed what I already suspected," she said, handing me a steaming mug. "You're trying to have a life beyond work, but you're failing miserably at it." I should have been offended, but I was too tired for that. "I'm doing my best." "I know you are. That's why I'm here." She took a sip of her coffee. "My brother was a single dad too. Raised my niece after my sister-in-law left. I watched him nearly kill himself trying to do it all alone. What happened? He built a support system. Let people help. Learn to prioritize." Her eyes met mine. "And so will you, starting now. The next few hours changed everything. As Emma slept soundly down the hall, Vanessa and I talked, really talked. Not as boss and employee, but as two people who understood loss and responsibility. I told her about Lisa's cancer diagnosis 3 weeks after Emma's second birthday. The brutal treatments. The mounting medical bills. How I'd left my career in publishing to care for them both, working odd jobs with flexible hours. How after Lisa died, I'd spent 2 years barely functioning, taking whatever work I could get while trying to be both parents to Emma. The job at Montgomery was my chance to get back into the field I loved, I admitted. But I think I've been overcompensating, trying to prove I deserve it. Vanessa's eyes softened. You more than deserve it, Daniel. Your insights are transforming our company. But I need you whole, not burned out. She outlined a plan. Flexible hours. 2 days a week working from home. A promotion to senior acquisitions editor with a substantial raise that would ease my financial burdens. And most shocking of all, access to the company's childcare center for the late afternoons. Why would you do all this for me? I asked, stunned. Because I recognize talent worth investing in. She hesitated, then added, and because 6 months ago, I promised myself I'd build a different kind of company than my father ran. One that values people as humans, not just productivity machines. As dawn broke outside my window, we had a new professional arrangement, and the beginnings of something that felt like friendship. The changes were immediate and overwhelming. With the flexible schedule, I could take Emma to school myself most days, actually speaking to her teachers instead of rushing off. The raise meant I could finally pay down Lisa's medical debts and even start a college fund for Emma. Working from home 2 days a week eliminated the constant guilt of being the last parent at pickup. But the most surprising change was in my relationship with Vanessa. Our late-night conversation had broken through the formal boss-employee dynamic. In planning meetings, she now asked my opinion first. She sent me articles about single parenting that actually helped. Once, she even dropped off a casserole when Emma had the flu and I missed 2 days of work. Colleagues noticed. Rumors started. I ignored them, focusing instead on the breathing room in my life that allowed me, for the first time in years, to consider dating again. Sarah from the dating app had understandably ghosted after I explained my text disaster. But 3 months after Vanessa's early morning visit, I found myself having coffee with Melissa, Emma's art teacher. You seem different lately, Melissa noted, stirring her latte. More present. I smiled, thinking of the changes in my life. I finally stopped trying to do everything perfectly and alone. That's a hard lesson for single parents, she said, her eyes warm with understanding. As a divorced mother of twin boys, she knew the struggle firsthand. Our coffee date turned into dinner the following weekend, with Emma happily staying at her best friend's house for a sleepover. For the first time since Lisa died, I felt the possibility of a new chapter opening. But life is rarely straightforward, especially for parents. The next morning, Emma refused to speak to me after I picked her up. Sweetie, what's wrong? I asked as she stomped to her room. You're trying to replace Mom, she finally burst out, tears streaming down her face. Katie's mom said she saw you with Ms. Reynolds at Rosario's. That's where you took Mom for her birthday. My heart sank. I hadn't even realized we'd gone to the same restaurant. Emma, honey, no one could ever replace your mom. Then why are you trying, she sobbed, slamming her door. I stood in the hallway, my brief happiness crumbling. How could I move forward without betraying Lisa's memory? How could I explain to a 6-year-old the complexity of grief and healing? The next day at work, I was distracted and unfocused. Vanessa noticed immediately, cornering me after a meeting I'd barely participated in. My office. 5 minutes, she said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Seated across from her, I found myself unexpectedly pouring out the whole story, the date, Emma's reaction, my own confusion. I feel like I'm betraying Lisa, I admitted. But I'm also so tired of being alone. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. The week after my divorce was finalized, I found myself standing in the cereal aisle at the grocery store, sobbing. Want to know why? I nodded, surprised by this personal revelation. Because I realized I could buy whatever cereal I wanted. My ex hated anything with marshmallows. She smiled slightly. It was this bizarre moment of grief and freedom all at once. What did you do? I bought 5 boxes of Lucky Charms and ate them for every meal for a week. She leaned forward. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting, Daniel. It means creating space for new joy alongside the memories. How do I explain that to Emma? With patience and consistency. And maybe. She hesitated. Maybe by letting her see that other people share her love for her mother. That evening, I canceled my plans with Melissa and instead sat with Emma, pulling out photo albums we hadn't looked at in months. We laughed over pictures of Lisa covered in flour during a baking disaster, and I told Emma stories she'd never heard about how her mother and I met in college. Mom would want us to be happy, I said gently as Emma traced Lisa's smile in a beach photo. That doesn't mean forgetting her. Emma looked up, her eyes so much like her mother's. Would she like Ms. Reynolds? I considered this carefully. I think she would. Your mom always said art saved her in middle school. She'd appreciate anyone who brings art to kids. It wasn't an immediate fix, but it was a start. That night, Emma asked if she could bring a drawing of our family, including Lisa, to school for Ms. Reynolds. Over the next few months, life settled into a new rhythm. Melissa and I took things slowly, including Emma in many of our outings. Vanessa continued to be an unexpected source of support, both professionally and personally. Then came the announcement that rocked Montgomery Publishing, a potential merger with Westfield Media, our biggest competitor. Suddenly, all the security I'd found seemed at risk. Nothing's decided, Vanessa assured the anxious staff during an all-hands meeting. Due diligence will take months, and I'm fighting to protect our team and culture. But the worry persisted, especially when Julian Westfield himself began appearing in our offices, his cold efficiency a stark contrast to the more humane environment Vanessa had created. He's gunning for your department first, Ryan from marketing warned me over lunch. Word is, he thinks your remote work arrangement sets a bad precedent. I tried to focus on my work, to prove my value beyond question. But the stress began seeping into home life. Emma noticed my distraction, my return to late nights hunched over spreadsheets. Are we going to have to move again? She asked one night, her small voice piercing my concentration. I pulled her onto my lap, suddenly aware of how much bigger she seemed than just a year ago. Why would you think that, sweetheart? Because you look worried like before. When we had to leave our house after Mommy died. The innocent observation hit me like a physical blow. I'd promised myself I'd never let Emma feel that instability again, yet here I was, letting anxiety cloud our home once more. That night, after tucking Emma in, I called Vanessa. I need to know the truth, I said without preamble. Is my position safe if this merger goes through? The silence on the other end lasted just long enough to answer my question. Westfield has traditional views about workplace structure, she finally said. He believes in face time, in measurable hours at a desk. So my arrangement would be first to go. I'm fighting for you, Daniel. For all the policies we've put in place. The acquisition metrics since you joined speak for themselves. But we both knew that numbers don't always win against entrenched attitudes. I thanked her and hung up, then sat in the dark of my living room, contemplating what this might mean for Emma and me. The next few weeks were tense. Julian Westfield became a regular presence, his evaluation of departments feeling more like an inquisition than a review. When he finally made it to acquisitions, he spent an hour questioning me about a recent proposal, his skepticism barely concealed. Interesting approach, he said, though his tone suggested the opposite. How much of this work was done remotely? All of our acquisitions team contributes valuable work regardless of location, Vanessa interjected smoothly, having sat in on the meeting. Westfield's thin smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course. Though I've always found that innovation happens best when minds are physically together. After he left, Vanessa stayed behind. That went well, she said with forced brightness. He hated everything about my approach, I replied, gathering my notes. He's from a different era. Give him time to see the results. But time was running short. The following Monday, HR sent out meeting invitations for organizational structure discussions to be held the following week. Mine was scheduled for Friday at 4:30 p.m., the last slot of the day. Everyone knew what that meant. I spent the week updating my resume, reaching out to old contacts, calculating how long my savings would last. I warned Melissa that I might need to cancel our weekend plans, depending on how Friday went. I looked at Emma each morning with a mix of love and dread, wondering how I would tell her that things were about to change again. Friday arrived with grim inevitability. I dressed carefully, wanting to maintain dignity even in dismissal. I hugged Emma extra tight at drop-off, memorizing the feel of her small arms around my neck. The day crawled by. Colleagues with earlier meeting slots returned with varying news, reassignments, role changes, a few promotions for those willing to commit to expanded hours and travel. No outright layoffs yet, but the writing was on the wall for anyone who couldn't conform to Westfield's vision. At 4:25, I straightened my tie and headed for the conference room. To my surprise, both Vanessa and Julian Westfield were waiting. Daniel, Westfield began without preamble. I've been reviewing your acquisition strategies over the past year. Impressive returns, particularly on the Nightingale series and the Chen biography. I nodded cautiously. Thank you. They were passion projects for me. Yes, Vanessa mentioned your personal investment in your work. He glanced at a folder before him. She's been quite adamant about your value to the company. Even suggested I should examine my assumptions about traditional workplace structures. My eyes darted to Vanessa, whose expression gave nothing away. Westfield continued. I've built my company on certain principles. Structure. Hierarchy. Physical presence. They've served me well. Here it comes, I thought, bracing myself for the inevitable. However, he said, surprising me, I've never been one to ignore results. Your numbers speak volumes. As does your boss's willingness to go to bat for you, quite forcefully, I might add. He slid a document across the table. We're creating a new division. Specialized acquisitions focused on diverse voices and emerging markets, areas where your instincts have proven particularly valuable. We'd like you to head it. I stared at the paper, trying to process his words. Head it? Senior Director. Salary commensurate with the responsibility. And yes, with the flexible arrangement you currently enjoy. Though we would require one additional office day per week. My gaze shifted to Vanessa, who now allowed herself a small smile. It was Julian's idea, actually. After he reviewed the financial projections. With one condition, Westfield added, his expression serious. I want to understand how you make this work. How you balance the responsibilities with the flexibility. If it succeeds, we may consider similar arrangements for other key positions. As I signed the offer letter, my hands slightly shaking, I realized what had happened. Vanessa hadn't just fought for my job, she'd used me as a test case to preserve the company culture she believed in. That evening, instead of dreading an uncomfortable conversation with Emma, I was able to take her out for celebration ice cream. As she happily devoured a chocolate sundae, I received a text from Vanessa. Congratulations again. Knew you were worth fighting for. P.S. Better double-check your contacts list before texting in the future. Some mistakes only work out once. Winking face. I laughed, drawing a curious look from Emma. Just a funny message from my boss, I explained. Ms. Montgomery is nice, Emma said matter-of-factly. She remembered my birthday and she doesn't even know me. I paused, spoon halfway to my mouth. What do you mean? She sent me a card and art supplies. Said it was from someone who understands what it's like to miss your mom. I hadn't known about this gesture, this quiet kindness extended to my daughter without fanfare or acknowledgement. It struck me then how many people had become part of our support system over the past year, Melissa with her patient understanding of Emma's grief, my colleagues who covered for me during school emergencies, neighbors who helped with occasional childcare. And Vanessa, who had seen value in me when I was barely keeping it together, who had restructured an entire workplace to accommodate human needs alongside business ones. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sent 2 texts. The first to Melissa, confirming our weekend plans and adding that Emma had specifically requested she join us. The second was to Vanessa, thank you isn't enough. But it's a start. Her reply came quickly, we all need someone to show up at our door sometimes. Just pay it forward. 3 years have passed since that night when my misdirected text brought Vanessa to my door at 3 a.m. Emma is now 9, thriving in school and particularly gifted in art, something Melissa nurtures with professional pride and personal affection. Our relationship has deepened gradually, with Emma's blessing, and last month Melissa moved in, bringing her now teenage twins into our blended family chaos. Montgomery Westfield Publishing has become an industry leader not just in content but in workplace policies. Julian Westfield, to everyone's surprise, became a convert to flexible work arrangements after seeing their impact on retention and productivity. My specialized division has outperformed projections every quarter, validating the trust placed in me. As for Vanessa, she remains both mentor and friend. When her father passed away last year, making her the majority shareholder of the company, she used her new position to institute parent-friendly policies across the entire organization. The childcare center now serves twice as many families, and the flexible work program has expanded to all departments. Recently, I found myself arriving early at the office, a rare occurrence these days. The building was quiet, most employees not due for hours. As I passed Vanessa's office, I noticed her light was on. I knocked softly on her open door. She looked up from her computer, shadows under her eyes suggesting she'd been there all night. Your turn to be drowning? I asked, echoing her words from years ago. She smiled wearily. Board presentation tomorrow. Trying to justify the expansion costs. I placed a coffee on her desk and sat down. Want a second set of eyes? For the next 2 hours, we worked side by side, refining her presentation, strengthening her arguments. As the building began to fill with arriving employees, she saved the final version and leaned back in her chair. We've come a long way from that text, haven't we? She mused. Sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the best outcomes, I replied. Though I wouldn't recommend my approach as a career advancement strategy. She laughed, the exhaustion momentarily lifting from her face. No, but I would recommend remembering that we're all human first, employees second. That's what built all this. As I left her office, I thought about the unlikely chain of events that had transformed my life. A careless text sent in exhaustion, a boss who saw beyond the mistake to the struggling human behind it, a company culture that valued people above protocols. The greatest lesson wasn't about work-life balance or career advancement. It was about the power of showing up for each other in unexpected ways, of seeing the whole person beyond their role or title, of building communities where vulnerability isn't punished but supported. That night, as Melissa and I helped all 3 kids with homework around our expanded dining table, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa, board approved everything. Couldn't have done it without you. Your mistake, my opportunity. Funny how life works. Indeed. One mistake, sent to exactly the right person at precisely the right moment, had created ripples that transformed countless lives, mine most of all. Sometimes the universe has a way of making sure our messages reach exactly who needs to hear them, even when we think we've made our biggest mistake. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about connection, redemption, and finding family in unexpected places. Remember, our greatest mistakes often lead us exactly where we need to be, if we're brave enough to open the door when opportunity knocks.